My friends, I wish you all a great Friday, but I need you to pay attention and, in the end, leave your opinion in the comments because everything surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers right now is starting to feel like the beginning of a massive turning point for this organization. And one of the biggest reasons why is the growing contract situation involving Joey Porter Jr. because what we are seeing at OTAs is not just a random offseason storyline anymore. This is becoming one of the first major tests for Omar Khan and the Steelers front office as they try to secure one of the most important defensive pieces on this roster for the long term. Joey Porter Jr. has been present at Steelers OTAs, attending meetings and staying around the team, but he has not been participating in on-field work and around the NFL that usually sends a very clear message. Players entering the final year of rookie contracts who believe they have earned a major extension often take this exact approach, while negotiations begin behind the scenes. And honestly, Steelers fans can understand exactly why Joey Porter Jr. feels this way right now. Last season, he established himself as the team's top cornerback and proved that he can handle the responsibility of matching up against elite receivers in difficult situations. With Patrick Graham now expected to bring more aggressive man coverage concepts into this defense, Joey Porter Jr. suddenly becomes even more valuable to what Pittsburgh wants to build. This defense is going to rely heavily on corners who can survive on islands outside, and there is no question the Steelers believe Porter can become one of those foundational players for years to come. The interesting part of this entire situation is how quickly the market for cornerbacks continues to explode around the NFL. The salary cap keeps rising, television numbers continue climbing, and the league's international expansion is expected to create even more revenue growth in the coming years. Because of that, contracts at premium positions are becoming more expensive almost every offseason, and Joey Porter Jr. knows it. That is why there is a growing belief that when his extension eventually gets finalized, the number could place him among the highest paid corners in football. Maybe not at the absolute top tier occupied by names like Trent McDuffie, Sauce Gardner, or Derek Stingley Jr., but potentially right underneath that range or even above some current deals already on the market. And this is where things become extremely important for Pittsburgh. Steelers fans have seen situations before where the organization waited too long to finalize major extensions. Negotiations drag deeper into the summer, training camp arrives, distractions begin building, and suddenly a situation that looked manageable becomes uncomfortable. The Steelers cannot really afford that this year because Joey Porter Jr. is not just another starter on defense. He is expected to be the CB1 in a scheme that may ask corners to play more man coverage than Steelers fans have seen in years. Pairing him with Jamel Dean on the outside could completely reshape the identity of this secondary, but that only works if both players are fully locked in and available throughout camp. There is also another layer to all this that Steelers fans probably appreciate more than most fan bases would. Joey Porter Jr. is not just another talented player wearing black and gold. The Porter family name carries weight in Pittsburgh. The legacy matters here. Steelers fans remember what Joey Porter Sr. brought to this franchise emotionally, physically, and culturally during some of the toughest years in AFC football. Keeping that family tied to the organization matters to people inside the building and outside of it. You can already tell the fan base wants Joey Porter Jr. to become one of the long-term faces of this defense. At the same time, another contract situation is quietly starting to build involving Nick Herbig, and this one could become just as important over the next several months. Like Porter, Herbig is entering the final year of his rookie contract, and after the flashes he showed last season, there is growing belief around the league that he could explode into a much bigger role very soon. Some people believe the Steelers could eventually use the franchise tag on him next offseason instead of immediately giving him a long-term extension, but that strategy comes with serious risks. The franchise tag for edge rushers has become incredibly expensive. This year it was already pushing close to $27 million, and with the salary cap continuing to rise, that number will likely increase even more next offseason. From the Steelers' perspective, you can understand the logic. Keep Herbig affordable this year, potentially use the tag later, and continue building around TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith for one more season before making larger decisions afterward. But situations like these are never controlled entirely by the team because players also have leverage. If Nick Herbig decides he wants long-term security immediately, things could become complicated. Around the NFL, we constantly see players skip practices, hold in during camp, or create pressure publicly when negotiations stall. The Steelers probably want to avoid that scenario entirely because of how important Herbig may become inside this defense, especially with the pass rush packages they are building. Toward the end of last season, Pittsburgh started using more NASCAR fronts featuring TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig all attacking together in obvious passing situations, and the results became extremely dangerous for opposing offenses. Now imagine adding Keanu Benton collapsing the interior while those three edge rushers attack at the same time. Suddenly you are looking at a defensive package that could become one of the most disruptive pass rushing groups anywhere in football. In a season where expectations are rising and Aaron Rodgers is viewed as part of a win-now window for Pittsburgh, maximizing the defense becomes critical. That is why keeping Herbig happy and keeping this entire pass rush group together may become one of the biggest priorities for the organization moving forward. And while most Steelers fans are focused on the big-name contract situations right now, there is another under-the-radar development happening that could quietly become one of the best stories of training camp. Undrafted rookie tight end Lake McCree from USC is starting to generate legitimate intrigue because after reviewing his film, there are signs Pittsburgh may have found an extremely smart and reliable receiving option without spending a draft pick. McCree is not the type of prospect that overwhelms people physically. He is not an elite athlete, he does not have rare speed, and he is not the biggest tight end prospect you will ever see. But what immediately stands out is how dependable he looks in the passing game. He consistently finds soft spots in zone coverage, understands spacing, and catches nearly everything thrown his way. Those traits matter tremendously, especially for a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who has always valued intelligence, timing, and route discipline over raw athleticism alone. At USC, McCree repeatedly became a trusted target in the intermediate areas of the field, particularly between 10 and 20 yards downfield. He looked comfortable sitting in the windows against zone defenses, adjusting to coverage, and presenting quarterbacks with reliable throwing lanes. That kind of awareness could give him a real chance to impress during camp, because Rodgers has openly shown frustration in the past with younger pass catchers who fail to understand route tempo or situational football correctly. The Steelers already have Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, and Riley Leonardowski competing for important roles in the tight end room, but there may still be an opening for another true receiving tight end if McCree proves himself during camp. And honestly, sometimes those undrafted players who simply know how to play football end up surprising everybody once pads come on. The deeper you look at everything happening around this team right now, the more it feels like Pittsburgh is entering one of the most important transitional periods in recent years. Massive contract decisions are approaching. The defensive identity may be changing under Patrick Graham. Young players are fighting for long-term roles, and the organization clearly believes this roster is capable of competing immediately. The question now becomes whether the Steelers front office can keep all these moving pieces together before distractions start building once training camp arrives. So Steelers fans, if you were running this team right now, would you give Joey Porter Jr. the massive top-tier extension immediately and lock Nick Herbig up long-term as well? Or would you risk waiting another season before making those commitments? What makes this entire situation even more fascinating is that the Steelers are clearly trying to balance two completely different timelines at once, and that is something fans should really pay attention to moving forward. On one side, you have a roster that still contains veteran stars expected to compete right now. On the other side, you have younger players like Joey Porter Jr. and Nick Herbig, who are supposed to become the long-term foundation of the franchise for the next several years. The challenge for Pittsburgh is figuring out how to win immediately without creating future contract problems that eventually damage roster flexibility. And that pressure becomes even more intense because this defense may honestly be on the verge of becoming the true identity of the football team again. Patrick Graham's arrival is already creating expectations that Pittsburgh is going to become more multiple, more aggressive, and much more unpredictable defensively. The emphasis on man coverage, disguised fronts, and creative pass rush alignments puts even more importance on keeping core defensive players happy before camp begins. If Joey Porter Jr. is not fully participating, if Nick Herbig's future becomes uncertain, or if negotiations drag too long into the summer, those distractions can absolutely affect preparation heading into the season. That is why a lot of people around the Steelers are starting to believe Omar Khan needs to be proactive instead of reactive here. The organization already showed they could move aggressively when they finalized Chris Boswell's deal early, and now fans are wondering if Pittsburgh will apply that same mindset to some of these younger defensive stars before prices rise even higher. Because the reality is simple, waiting rarely makes elite talent cheaper in today's NFL. Every single year, the market resets. Every offseason, new contracts arrive that completely change positional expectations around the league. And with Joey Porter Jr., there is a very real argument that paying him now could actually save Pittsburgh money long term. If he takes another major step this season and fully establishes himself as one of the premier shutdown corners in football, the number only climbs higher from here. That is especially true in a defense built around aggressive coverage concepts where elite corners become even more valuable than usual. Teams across the NFL are desperate for true man-cover corners who can survive against elite receivers without constant safety help, and players capable of doing that are becoming incredibly expensive. The same logic applies to Nick Herbig. Right now, the Steelers still have a chance to potentially structure a deal before he explodes statistically in a larger role, because if Herbig delivers a massive season rotating alongside TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, suddenly his market changes dramatically. Pass rushers are among the highest paid players in football, and once teams believe a young edge rusher can consistently affect quarterbacks, negotiations become extremely aggressive very quickly. What makes Herbig's situation unique is how perfectly he fits into what Pittsburgh wants defensively right now. The Steelers started experimenting more frequently with those NASCAR fronts late last season, and offenses clearly struggled handling the speed and pressure from multiple directions at once. Offensive lines already have enough trouble accounting for TJ Watt individually. Adding Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig attacking in the same package creates chaos for protections, especially in obvious passing situations. And honestly, there is a growing belief that Keanu Benton could become the hidden weapon that makes everything even more dangerous. Benton's ability to penetrate inside and collapse pockets forces quarterbacks to speed up decisions, and that directly helps edge rushers finish plays. If Benton continues developing the way Pittsburgh hopes, this front could become one of the most disruptive groups in the AFC. That is a huge reason why Steelers fans are becoming so invested in these contract conversations already, because they understand the defense might be capable of carrying this team deep into the season if everything comes together correctly. But while the major headlines focus on stars and contracts, stories like Lake McCree are exactly the type of developments that